Okay, going to finish up before you go any further the Vienna Genesis, which you've already watched a video on, or you were supposed to have watched a video on. We know this is from early Byzantine Europe. I spoke earlier about Byzantine art and how you should associate it, of course, with Justinian. This may not have been created under the exact reign of Justinian, but close. Um, we need to also remember with Byzantine art, we're talking about icons, we're talking about mosaics in churches, we're talking about mostly centrally planned churches. But here we have an illuminated manuscript. An illuminated manuscript basically just means a manuscript that has illustrations on it. But typically, illuminated manuscripts have illustrations that are created in part with valuable material. And in this case, as you know from watching the video, the writing is done in part in silver. Now it's obviously tarnished. We have little bits here that are still shining, but it would have been written in silver. This is an example, of course, of continuous narration. We see several episodes of the same story. I'm not going to go into the story because you should already know because you've watched it. I do want to emphasize the idea of, or the fact that there are certain classical elements in this image, specifically the colonnade, the row of columns here that we see on the bridge, right? And as you know from reading the article about early Christian and medieval art, there's an emphasis here not on realism, but on being symbolic and getting the importance of the spiritual aspects of the story across. So with respect to illuminated manuscripts, they often also include lots of decorations. You'll see another illuminated manuscript in the videos I'm going to ask you to watch of Lindisfarne Gospels, which are actually far more decorated than these, kind of in a really amazing way. I want to note also the fact that this is written on vellum. Vellum is a sheep or calf skin. So it's basically kind of a leather here that it's written on, but make note that it's vellum. So it's been able to, it lasts, I imagine, probably in better shape than paper does, or maybe not. But vellum, it's important to note that it's made on vellum. That's going to be expensive. Any kind of paper or a surface that you would write on is going to be expensive at this time, right? The story is from Genesis. I'm not going to go into the story, but there it is. You should have already watched the videos. You should already know what this is about in terms of Jacob wrestling the angel. So you want to think about, with respect to illuminated manuscripts, who owns the books, right? Most of our houses are filled with books, right? But books were not common back then, because to make a book required incredible amounts of time and money, right? They don't have printing presses. There are no Xerox machines. There are no typewriters or anything like that. So everything has to be hand created, bound by hand, etc. Also, you want to think about lighting conditions. Obviously, during the daylight, it's fairly easy to see, but if you want to read anything anytime after or close to sunset or before sunrise, you have to be reading by the light of a fire, and a fire is going to flicker, and you want to think about the effect on the silver on the page, right? And what spiritual effect that would have had. So obviously this is meant to be read and pondered over and admired while it's being read. So it's not just about reading and getting information, but it is also about the spiritual experience of reading that is enhanced by the flickering of the silver that would have happened by the light of a fire. So remember, with both Jacob wrestling the angel and also this next one that we're going to look at, we have information that is going to be recalling both classicism, i.e., Greece and Rome, combined with the messages and the style of early Christian art, which, as I've just taken this from Khan Academy, medieval artists were not interested in realistic representations of space. We're interested in the symbolic representations, right? And the images kind of seem cartoon-like in comparison to something we would have seen from the Greeks or the Romans, right? But it's not about being realistic for them. So the story of Rebecca and Eliezer at the well, Eliezer, I think, is I'll just go ahead and read it. The story is from Genesis. Abraham, you might know the story of Abraham and Isaac. Abraham wants to find a wife for his son Isaac and sends a servant to find one among Abraham's very large extended family. And Eliezer takes some camels to a well and prays to God that Isaac's future wife shows up. Rebecca, here she is here, and she's also here, so you know this is a continuous narration, right? Rebecca shows up and assists Isaac, or assists the servant Eliezer, in finding in watering the camels, and so that's how he knows this is going to be the wife for Isaac, and so she becomes Isaac's wife. Okay, so here's just another representation of the same thing. Here she looks pretty overwhelmed, but you don't have to worry about this. I bring this up to show that it's a common subject in art. So remember, symbolism, abstraction. We see a medieval walled city here. We see, again, a row of colonnades. We see a representation of a river, right? So remember, with the Trajan's column, the river Danube was represented by the kind of big, shirtless, bearded man. Here we have a river being represented by a female figure here. That is a classical device, right? Representing a river as a human. Okay, we do have some sense of depth trying to be achieved here by the different shading, darkened shading of a leg here, indicating that it's supposed to be behind the other frontal legs, a darker camel here. So there is a sense of depth being achieved, also with the folding of the clothes, but it is also somewhat flat. I've mentioned with Byzantine art appears somewhat flat. Think back to the Theotokos and Child between two angels. There's a flatness to even to the bodies, and so we get the same kind of flatness here. We know the association with purple. I know it looks kind of brownish, but it's just because it's faded. It's actually initially purple, and we know we associate that with royalty and empire. So this obviously would have been made for somebody who was very, 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 very wealthy. So better purple there. Okay. I would recommend, if you would like this more filled in, that you read the article. There is an article about the Vienna Genesis, and it is on Khan Academy. Thanks.